Hi everyone, Emily here from Emilysvisions. Bit sleepy. Yes, today I wanted to talk about, make a video about teaching by example, which I think is an interesting thing. I've been sort of watching the way that we communicate with others, the way I communicate with others, I'm just very interested in human dynamics. I think one of the reasons for that is because, well, I'm interested, as a kind of, I guess, an anthropologist, I'm interested in human dynamics, the sort of things that we tend to experience and do, regardless of which genre we're working in. There's certain repeating dynamics. And the other thing is, of course, as someone who has frequent seizures, I'm often having to sort of build myself back up as a human after I've had a seizure, and so I'm both interested in finding out, what it means to be a human, so that I can put those blocks together, but also I've experienced the absence of those things when you just can't do them. I think actually that's something that disability is really good. If disabled people can then speak up about their experiences, often we don't understand. It's like, when we say often in a relationship, you don't know what you've got until it's gone. After the relationship, sometimes you think, oh, actually I missed it when so-and-so did this or so-and-so did that. And with human life, it can be a bit like that. You don't, for example, really celebrate the fact that you could actually, if you're able to right now and you're not disabled, you could get up out of the chair or wherever you're sitting and you could go for a walk around the block, and it would be good for your body and it would be good for your mind, and you could do that. But it's not so easy for some people who have a disability, and sometimes when you have a disability, the fact that there's times, or like for me it's a timing thing, but for other people it's not. It's like, it's like permanent. It really makes you appreciate what you have, and also recognise that other people can do things that you can't, which is frustrating. Anyway, teaching by example. So I believe that we all have strong potential to be teaching by example pretty much all the time if we choose to. I think that's really interesting, and I've noticed that like when I became a parent, I thought, well, it made me think about what I've learnt about the world and how what values and things, what things I take for granted, what things I think are normal, all of those things, and I figured that actually a lot of learning what it meant to be a human was learnt by watching my parents, and particularly like learning what it means to be a woman was by watching my mother, as she gave me the example of. She's my main example of what a woman is. So, and it's interesting. So, teaching by example is something that we can do without even opening our mouths. And as we go about our daily life, we can decide what kind of life we want to live, and actually within that we present it to others, even without opening our mouths. We don't need to be making a big thing about the way we live our lives, but people will be watching us and will be learning from us, particularly if we are in a position of responsibility, like being a parent or teacher, a traditional teacher or things like that. So I think that's a really powerful relationship, and I wanted to mention it because I've noticed over the last few years there's been a bit of a shift in human attitudes towards, being able to claiming yourself and doing what you want, and living the life that you want, that in a way that doesn't reference other people. And I find that's a problem with that, because actually we are affecting the people around us. Recently we had the proroguing of Parliament, which turns out to be, it didn't happen. But Boris, for example, Boris Johnson is supposed to be a Prime Minister. He's supposed to be doing the job of a Prime Minister. Everybody else is looking at him to do the job of a Prime Minister. So, in that context, saying, oh well, I can't really be bothered for a while, which is kind of what he was doing, it's not appropriate. And there's other people too going, I've decided that I'm like this, and and again, that's fine, but I see people often forgetting that there are lots of other people around who are actually watching them. And I also see sometimes I've noticed, and I've had this had this a bit in my upbringing as well, because I have had a certain amount of narcissism and gaslighting in my life, struggling to sort of deal with the fact that I'm epileptic, and I didn't really get much acknowledgement for that when I was a child. So I've had to do a lot of work as an adult to kind of figure out who I am. But very often, as I was growing up, I noticed there were people who would say, "Oh well, we should be nice and kind to others. We should be patient." Or telling me, "You should be patient with others. You should be kind with others. You should consider these things. You should be a good girl." But at the same time, those people weren't necessarily behaving in that way towards me. And so, for example, you could say to someone, you should be a nice person. But if you're not demonstrating being a nice person, especially to the person you're talking to, then what example do they have? Where are they going to pluck this good girl from? This person who allows you to do whatever it is you want and empathise with you and celebrate, your wins, when you're not celebrating theirs, and you're not celebrating, people, and you can celebrate people's wins, but I think it's very important to recognise teaching by example happens in a small circle. And so, celebrating, for example, somebody's successes, that's halfway across the world, or someone that you don't really have a relationship with, doesn't really teach by example, because people aren't really witnessing a relationship. That your celebration is happening inside your mind, and it's not a teaching by example thing. So I just wanted to mention that today, because I think it's such a powerful thing to be able to do. And of course, I'm not really saying what you might teach by example. You could decide to teach anything by example, and so I'm not even saying that you should teach it by example by being very nice to people. I'm not even saying that. You might want to teach by example of being a very strong person and an assertive person. But then or you might want to teach by example by doing good things for charity, or you might want to teach by example by not caring about what some people say and fighting for your cause, but expecting people to counter your example, with a different type of reaction. Like, for example, as an epileptic, I can say to people that I'm having a seizure. I'm starting to be able to actually tell people when I'm starting to have a seizure. But I can't expect them to look after me, because what I'm setting them an example of really is saying, this is where I am, this is my life, and I'm in the corner ignoring you. So if I was then going, when I have a seizure out in the public, no one looks after me, they neglect me, or they judge me. Well, I'm not actually in that moment teaching being open and communicative, so I can't expect that to come back to me. So I think it's an important thing to recognise that we could be teaching by example, and that we probably are teaching by example, and no concrete definition or inner motivation of ours changes that fact. So I just wanted to mention that today. A bit convoluted, maybe. I'm having very good feedback from my videos, by the way, on YouTube and in other places. So I just really want to thank everybody for their support, and if you're interested, you could subscribe to my Patreon, and also subscribe to my YouTube channel, and yeah, we just share this journey together, and yeah, I'm just keeping going. Thank you.